And every one of those producers at 60 Minutes engaged in this revolt, fire them. Clean house, fire them. That's what I say, Charlie.
But here's the good news. If Bari Weiss thought she was burying this story, she's done exactly the opposite.
They can try to bury the truth, but just like the Epstein files, Trump and his appointees have a lot to answer regarding immigration.
This is insane. And this is CBS News / Paramount / 60 Minutes. Personally, I canceled my Paramount subscription today. These are also the same folks that paid millions of dollars to Donald Trump so they could get this merger to happen. But Bari Weiss, now the head of CBS News, clearly a right-winger, clearly in line with Donald Trump, has made it clear that 60 Minutes will do the administration's bidding now. This is absolutely the opposite of free press, which is ironic since she started an organization called The Free Press.
Just hours before 60 Minutes was going to air an expose on CECOT, the El Salvadorian brutal prison that Trump had paid multi-million-dollar contract to in order to house migrants. Well, Bari Weiss, the new head of CBS News, canceled that. She was the one that was installed by Larry and David Ellison. She was the one that was praised after her appointment. Now, as we know, that same Larry and David Ellison, they want to buy Warner Brothers. They want to outbid Netflix, essentially, and buy it. This requires federal regulatory approval. And lately, Trump has been talking about how he isn't happy with 60 Minutes. Well, I am sure he is happy now because of this cancellation. Bari Weiss said that the reason why she canceled it is because the segment didn't have full context, that it lacked critical voices. Those are code words for basically it didn't tell the story based on Trump. The reporter who created that segment spoke to her colleagues saying that this had been vetted multiple times, screened multiple times, and had passed all the usual legal, ethical standards, that there was no reason journalistically to cancel that segment, that this was pure politics. Well, that segment ended up airing on a Canadian app, evidently accidentally, although I hope purposely, because journalism is essential to our democracy. And we have seen over and over Trump try to stop critical voices in the First Amendment. We see even with the Pentagon press passes, him trying to cancel legitimate news sources. We see them trying to go after universities to shut down critical thinking and voices. And of course, here with Jimmy Kimmel and now CBS News, stopping a very important segment. Well, in that segment, because we all got a chance to see it now that it was out because of the Canadian app, we see the reporting, how detailed that reporting is, how substantiated that reporting is. Of course, they had reached out to Trump and there had been no comment. So Bari Weiss and her lacking critical voices means that this may never have aired. As the reporter said, if we are not airing something because the administration, whoever that administration is, decides not to comment, it is essentially a kill switch. Basically, it is their own fault if they decide to comment or not. You don't change what you report based on whether or not the people in power want you to report it.
This was a train wreck. I mean, really unusual, almost unprecedented to yank a story at the last minute like that. I've seen it along with thousands of other people, thanks to that bootleg copy that the Canadians put out. It's a really strong investigative piece, squarely in the tradition of 60 Minutes. But here's the good news. If Bari Weiss thought she was burying this story, she's done exactly the opposite. It's become a cause célèbre. I think there's going to be tremendous pressure for CBS to air this. I can remember when 60 Minutes spiked a story about a big tobacco whistleblower back in the late 90s, and that later became a movie starring Al Pacino. I think this is going to have legs, and there's going to be tremendous pressure on CBS to air it, with the result that it becomes, that it gets even more attention than it would have.
The very detailed segment talks about the torture that these men received, basically at the hands of the American people, because we sent them to that prison. knowing the conditions that it was. Trump himself spoke highly of it, saying it was a strong place. So we sent them there knowingly. And they talk about the conditions, the torture that they receive, the physical and sexual abuse that they received, the fact that lights would be on for 24 hours, that the only water they could drink from would be the toilet or the bathtub, the fact that their genitals were hit by other people's hands. And these claims weren't just made by the people who were there, although 2 men did speak directly to the reporter who did this segment, but it was also substantiated by a group of students at Berkeley who work with the human rights organization that brought this to light. They were also a target of Bari Weiss. She questioned basically why they were involved. Well, why they were involved is because they were essentially a third party who fact-checked what these men had to say. And I'm sure that's what Bari Weiss didn't like, that there was a third party fact checker, that Trump couldn't just say what he wanted and then somebody else say and then have him say, see, like nobody knows. Well, they knew. This group actually put out a statement because they don't just do this, obviously, for 60 Minutes. The Human Rights Center at University of California, Berkeley, put out a statement. They put out a statement in response to Bari Weiss's question, which said, quote, "The analysis from the Berkeley students is strange. What does the analysis add? Question mark. They answer, we can answer her question using geolocation, image analysis, and other verification methods. Our students investigated the secret transfers of Venezuelan migrants to the CECOT mega prison in El Salvador by the Trump administration for Human Rights Watch. Our team helped verify detention conditions, identify key locations, and support survivor and family accounts. This work was conducted carefully, ethically, and in partnership with trusted human rights organizations." And they went on to say that they conduct this in a way, the thoroughness that is needed to be able to present the evidence in court. That, Bari Weiss, is why this was included, because this was an outside organization able to verify things that the survivors and family had said. This CBS News specifically points to the fact that they were able to verify the identity. That infamous photo of Kristi Noem, who's sitting there in front of the prison, and there's people in the back, and she's saying she's putting away these dangerous criminals. Well, it turns out because of this group, they were able to identify the tattoos, and those tattoos identify them as El Salvadorian gang members, not Venezuelan gang members. So this was not people that were sent there by Trump. Trump says he was sending the Venezuelans to El Salvador, but that wasn't the case, that they had probably had been there for years. Important information that this group was able to verify. And another thing really coming out also in this segment, which we have seen other reports of, but it really a persuasive segment because it puts together so much information that had been reported before in a very cohesive and very damning and convincing expose. And the CBS talking about having the human rights representative, not at the Berkeley, but the organization, the nonprofit organization, come and say that what they had found about how little of the people were actually convicted of violent crimes, despite the fact that that's what Trump and Kristi Noem said they were sending people there for. That in fact, it was just 3% have been sentenced for a violent or potentially violent crime. And that data came from ICE itself, from the information ICE had collected about the people they were deporting. This was where human rights got the information. Really, really important expose, and not a surprise that Trump and his cohorts are trying to stop and tried to stop this story. Yet another example of them trying to stop the freedom of press, which, because this is a crucial check that democracy needs, is a free press.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to add the MeidasTouch podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts for new updates every single day.